to the panel of experts. I think we do have a few minutes left, so the floor is open. Please just speak up, whoever has something to say.
Karen, I hate to keep on asking all the questions here, but I love this topic so much, so I just have to offer one more question. And this is for everybody, and I want to ask about the linkage between some of the work at the project level and then the NDC or policy level, and how some of our speakers or some of the panelists see these type of tools helping to strengthen the linkage between sort of project level change and wider scale change. Anybody want to come in on that one? I think it's a really important, thing that we need for transformation. So just wanted to hear any thoughts there.
Sure, maybe I can start. Once we have such tools that will harmonize how SDG contributions and impacts are measured and reported on, it allows to aggregate these effects and impacts at the national level. And that will then allow to measure more meaningfully how these contributions can make NDCs a reality and contribute to achieving the goals set at the national level, both for the global goals and the NDC. So I think the harmonization of approaches and methodologies and application of those across sectors, across policies, across programs and projects will allow to, again, more meaningfully report also on NDC progress.
Thanks. I also have a comment myself, but I see Hugh, you turned on the camera. Maybe you have some reflections on this?
Yeah, no, I mean, just to say, we're thinking about exactly that question now. I think that was at the end of my presentation. Like, the next step in our enhancement of our tool is taking it from project level assessment to how can that support countries in understanding effects at the national level, and in particular kind of for Article 6. So we're working this through right now. And I think this was said earlier, kind of the value of the SDG framework is it's global and harmonized, but within some countries, there are different approaches taken to sustainable development objectives. So we're thinking through how to make this work in a way that can work for all different jurisdictions. So there's more that we'll be able to share on that soon. There's some work which we want to publish at some point in the next 6 months on that question. I just quickly wanted to say, kind of pick up on one thing which I wish I'd said earlier. So Hasib talked about the positive and negative impacts, and this is something that we've been thinking through a lot in what we've been doing in Gold Standard. And at the moment, our tool is set up to measure and monitor the positive impacts, but safeguarding against the negative ones is built into our requirement. So the tool's kind of one element of what we're trying to do, but the negative is there as well. But one thing we are considering is, how do you make sure you're taking into effect the side effects? So if there are a particular number of jobs created from a project, is that having a knock-on effect elsewhere? And are you reflecting that accurately versus just looking in a kind of narrow way at the project? So we're trying to make sure we do take into account the wider consequences, so we have kind of more accurate information, because I think it's a really important point, and I wish I'd said it. And then, yeah, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks. I know we are almost at the end. I would just like to make a few comments, both maybe starting backwards on the negative impacts. I think personally that some more procedural aspects of the tools that enable stakeholder engagement, it's a way of knowing about negative impacts. So far, in my experience, you have more, the way to know about the synergies, the trade-offs is more qualitative, and it's quite often based on expert judgment through literature studies. It's quite hard to do it because it's so complex in a very objective manner, the synergies and trade-offs, but they are taken care of, as you say, in the safeguards in a more procedural way. And I think to the question from Eric on aggregation, many tools are at intervention level, meaning that they are sort of project or program specific. And in my experience, developing methodologies for transparency, which is for governments to report to the convention. We do see that registries in some countries have also started to assess sustainable development impacts in an integrated way with the emission reductions, so that you can, when you quantify, you can aggregate. Whereas in the past, a tool like the CDM Sustainable Development Tool, it was much more qualitative, it was more a narrative, and you can't really aggregate that. You can't aggregate sort of narrative information, but you can aggregate quantitative information. So now that we are moving in that direction, and I don't think we should go all in at once, because it takes time and costs money if you want to do it well. So I think it would be a mix going forward. But for the transformational change and assessing synergies, trade-offs in a more holistic assessment of upscale climate actions, for ambition raising, for NDC implementation, going the right direction, but a lot of work. Let me see if there are any final comments before we close. Yes, Naoki.
Okay, thank you. As for the Rex questions, I think that the scene that kind of tools are to be used is at the time of the judgment or selection and design of such policy measures. For example, we have the objective that is to, for example, electrify the rural areas of grid areas. Then we have several options. Then we are to compare with them. And for that kind of selection process, such an SD tools that are to be utilized as one of the tools that are to be used for such a judgment. So, and such an SD tool that can allow us to judge objectively that this is better, or this could be the second option, or something like that. That I'd like to say now. Thank you.
Thanks. I think with this, I would like to close the webinar and just remind you that we have recorded and will make presentations and recordings available after the webinar. So on behalf of all the partners, and thanks to the panelists and all the participants, we will be in touch again. This is also for networking, so I hope we can be in touch if you need to reach out to any of us. Thanks a lot for attending.
Thanks everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for organizing this.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you everyone.
Thank you everyone.